Most analysts predict that the fiscal stimulus will have its greatest impact on growth in the second and third quarters of 2009. And by mid-2010, fiscal stimulus will likely be contributing little to further growth. We enter the fourth quarter of 2009 with the unemployment rate nearing 10% and likely to remain severely elevated.
Well, Christina Romer, the president's top economic advisor, the chair of the Council of Economic Advisors, says essentially the stimulus will have done what it's going to do this year and that unemployment does not look good. That, however, comes after many administration officials in recent weeks, actually in the past 5 days, have painted a little bit different picture. Take a listen.
We hope and we believe we can, with your help, use the Recovery Act as sort of jump-starting an engine that creates jobs that are well-paying jobs that people will be able to live.
We're fully on track with the recovery bill and the spending that's going forward, but we've only spent about a little less than half of the money, and so we still have a ways to go with the recovery bill.
Well, here are the numbers, just the flat numbers, unemployment numbers. Americans employed as of February, 133 million roughly. Americans employed as of September 2009, 130 million. Jobs lost between that time, this is when the stimulus was passed, until September, 2.7 million. Those are labor statistics. What about all of this and the back and forth about the stimulus? Let's bring in our panel. Steve Hayes, senior writer for the Weekly Standard. Juan Williams, news analyst for National Public Radio, and syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer. Steve.
Well, I think one of the interesting things that we have to look at is you start from their benchmark, their original benchmark, which was 8%. This is not going to go above 8%. Well, we're now probably 2 points above 8%. But I think, to a certain extent, the Obama administration is right. There are indicators that the recession is over. We've said that now for a couple of quarters. The question is, how long will jobs lag behind, number one? And number two, what will Obama administration policies, which are largely, I think, growth-killing policies, what effect will they have on that recovery? Nobody knows. You know, this is all guesswork. I think you can see that the Obama administration has different opinions inside the administration. That's something that's not helpful if you're on the White House message team. But I think one thing that Republicans really need to be careful of at this point is spending too much time talking about jobs. You can do that now, but if the unemployment recovers, if the unemployment numbers improve, you're stuck, and the Obama administration is going to be able to say, look, our stimulus worked.
Well, technically, a recession is when there's 2 quarters back-to-back of negative growth. The GDP is negative. So we haven't yet technically seen a way out of this recession yet. But when you hear the low expectation game out of Christina Romer, is she trying to paint the picture that, you know what, we're going to have to deal with this for a long time, and it's okay, the economy is still going to recover despite employment numbers?
Yeah, I don't think there's any question. That's exactly that's the way I read it. Now, what struck me was the inconsistency in the message. The message for the longest time had been that the administration was careful with the stimulus money, not to roll it out too quickly. Remember, there were arguments that it should have been put in place more quickly to spur employment right away. And they said, no, we don't want to risk that this money will then be subject to corruption and spent on things that are useless. We want to make sure we know what we're doing, and we put it in place, and then it's going to really be rolling out during 2010. So now to hear from Christina Romer, no, really, it's had its impact already, came to me as a surprise. I didn't know is she off message, or is she simply playing the expectations game? I will say this, I think for people on Wall Street, one of the reasons that Wall Street has been climbing is the general expectation that, yes, unemployment is going to persist, but we're going to have the stimulus money that's going to help with this issue in 2010. She undercut that message at this point.
Well, not only that message, but Valerie Jarrett just 4 days before that said, we've only spent 40%, and wait until you see what happens to the next 60%.
Well, look, the administration was trying to explain away for months why it spends almost $1 trillion and there is no effect. As our numbers are showing, obviously, increase in unemployment relentlessly. So the line was, well, it's kicking in next year. It'll all kick in next year. And now we get the chief economist at the White House telling us that it's already had its effect, and next year it will plateau, and it's not going to have any effect on unemployment. And you can only conclude that the stimulus is a bust. There's no other conclusion. If it didn't have its effect this year, it's not going to have an effect next year. Then it had no effect, and we wasted $1 trillion.
Now they say it could have, it saved jobs. They say 600,000 to 1 million jobs, and it could have been much worse. That's what the administration says.
And that is, it's angels on the head of a pin. This idea of saved the jobs is completely unempirical. There's no way to show it in any way, in any model. It's an invention. What you do is you look at real numbers, and the real numbers show a radical increase in unemployment, and we're told it's going to remain that way. So look, it's obviously what you want to say, that there are these mysterious saved the jobs. If there are any, they're almost entirely in the way the stimulus helped to bail out states that had overspent, were going out of business, especially large blue states, and kept bureaucrats in their jobs as the private sector was shedding its jobs. And that's why it's not going to help our overall growth.
But that is the argument to be made, that it helped states, especially states that were over their Medicare spending, to compensate for that so that people could stay employed, and that helps, of course, with consumer confidence and retail sales.
But what about this one? Let's say we're only at 40%. So you have 60% that has yet to be spent, and you have your chief economist saying it's not going to make a difference next year. Well, why not take the 60% and give a tax credit to businesses or do something else with that money instead of spending it on where they were going to spend it on?
Well, see, I'm not clear. I mean, now I'm confused. I'm totally bollocksed up about this. One person saying it's had its impact, the money's been spent. I think that's what Christina Romer's saying, and that you're hearing from Axelrod and Jarrett that no, really, we're not going to roll out, because if the money isn't spent...
No, she's saying the fiscal stimulus will have its greatest impact on growth in the second and third quarters of 2009, and by next year, it essentially won't affect growth.
I don't get it, because if you're rolling out projects, if you're doing the infrastructure projects that they were talking about, if you're doing the kind of things that are going to build the innovation economy, investment in kind of research, how could it not have the impact?
There's a huge disconnect here.
That's what I'm saying.
They're just not on message. I mean, now is as good as time to any for me to reveal to you and to everybody watching that I've either lost or didn't gain 30 pounds since June. So you can't make that argument. It's amazing to me that the president still makes it. He made it in his presentation the other day with small businesses. It is a phony number. People have ridiculed it forever, and it's one of the things that I think is really contributing to this lack of understanding of what the stimulus has actually done.
One thing that we know it did do, which is indisputable, it added $1 trillion on our deficit, which is going to have an effect on unemployment in the future, because it's going to increase our debt service.
The lightning round is next, including your online choice for the first topic. We'll be right back.